Right. Hopefully my video is working. We're kind of having some issues with that. Thanks, Mandy. Yeah, it was great to see everyone out at the OC Christmas party this year. Today we're going to do San Diego. So hopefully we'll see everybody over there as well. So good morning. Um, Last meeting of the year. Then we're going to go on break for a couple weeks and we'll be back on January 6th, I believe it is. Well, whatever the first Monday of January is, I believe it's January 6th. Um, Even though we're going to take a break from the meetings for the next couple weeks for the holidays, office is still open. We're still taking calls. Support staff's all still in place. We're all still working. We're just not going to have the Monday meetings. Office will be closed on the January 1st and December 25th. So there's no mail service on those days. So if we're getting any closing packages or anything like that, it'll have to wait until the next business day to be received. But other than that, we're open as usual. We're just not doing the meetings for the next couple weeks. So before we get started on the forms release, we're gonna cover. I'm not covering all the forms today. I'm covering a vast majority of them. There's been some small updates to some of them, some bigger updates to other ones, a couple new ones. Basically, we're just going to cover the ones that are most used or most important, I guess, if you want to call it that. Not that the other ones are less important, but so I'm going to cover, the bulk of what was released. But before we get started, we have Paul DeMambro. He works with our Tried and True team, does a lot of training, and just helps us stay organized over there. He's just going to kick off with a little bit of loan info, and then we will get started on the forms release. Good morning, Paul. How's it going?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you very much. Hi, everybody. How's everybody doing? Christmas party in Anaheim was awesome yesterday. Got to meet quite a few of you. And if you're going to the San Diego one, I won't be there, but you're going to definitely enjoy it. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. Second. Can you see my screen, Travis?
I sure can.
Hey, Travis, can you see the screen? Okay.
Oh, sorry, I was on mute. Yep, I can see
Okay.
it.
Okay. No problem.
Yep, you're
All
good.
right. Cool. Okay, everybody. So I have been in the mortgage industry for over 20, 25 years. I know a lot of things have changed. I know a lot of the guidelines and almost like the back of my hand. So you have an opportunity today if you want to get your NMLS license and enhance your business. And I'm going to show you how you could do that. So mortgage broker X training. There we go. Okay. So Broker X offers a 5-week course designed to transition individuals from unlicensed to licensed mortgage loan originators, supporting into the wholesale mortgage lending industry. The program is aimed to fostering career growth and expanding market share for mortgage brokers, including comprehensive virtual training approved by the nationwide mortgage licensing system, which is also known as NMLS. Participants undergo a 4 week of licensing preparation and test prep with on-course learning, who we partner with, followed by a final week of on-site experience at UWM, which is also known as United Wholesale Mortgage. They're located in Michigan. Great. They're one of the top nation mortgage lenders. This path will offer significant career opportunities for you, including flexibility and potential long-term success in helping borrowers secure home ownership. For those of you that know Elma, she does real estate and loans, and she took the opportunity over summer to fly to Michigan. They paid for her flight and hotel, and she took some training courses, extra courses to learn the business more and more. Even though she's been in the business for over 30 years, she kind of understood how loan works, but the back office stuff is like pretty detailed. You got to know a lot of things to get through the process, help your clients and have more control on your deals rather than having somebody else deal with it. So what to expect? Okay, just in general, orientation, the first hour, review program requirement, ensure your eligibility to participate, register to take and secure the fair enforcement for the MLO, safe MLO exam. Weeks 1 and 2 on your right is test prep, which count towards your 20 hours of credit required by the NMLS. NMLS approved webinars, small group sessions, tutoring. Then week 3 to 4, you study, you take the test virtually, self-paced. Review the material from week 1 and 2. You take practice tests. You take a proctor supervised safe MLO test in person, wherever you're located at. You make the appointment and so forth. So if you're in San Diego, they're going to give you choice. Okay, here are the list of places you do in San Diego. If you're in Anaheim, or heck, if you're in Texas, it's the same way. We're licensed in California and Texas. Um, Week 5 on site. This is like after you pass the test. Okay. United Wholesale Mortgage will actually pay for your ticket and your hotel in Michigan. It's 3 days in-person success track class at UWM headquarters. Um, they'll do role playing, mock phone calls, networking with other MLOs across the country. So you're not by yourself. And honestly, for the past several years, I have been going to UWM once a year with their success track. There's always changes, there's always some good stuff to learn, networking. And as I grow my business, it's like I've been doing it for so long that I might be going quarterly. They actually now will go, they'll pay for your trip quarterly if you want to. You'll learn leadership, you'll learn other courses, income calculation. So it's not just like the one course you go one time. Like I said, going to Michigan is optional, but if you go, you're doing yourself a favor. You're learning, you're going to feel more secure, you're going to feel like you're learning a lot more stuff. Just remember, as you know, real estate always changes. Your job changes, same thing with loans. Loans, they have a little bit more of a faster pace of change. You change the guidelines, you change this, you change that, regulation, boom. Okay, so right here, weeks 1 and 2, this is like a example of the schedule. And this is, I believe, the time is based on Eastern time. So like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, you're doing something. You got your webinar boot camp, then you have webinar MLO activity, small groups, of course, on a webinar. Another webinar on Wednesday, general mortgage knowledge. You're going to learn more about mortgages, general things. It's not like you're going to be studying the guidelines itself, because guidelines change all the time. You're going to be learning generally what mortgage is all about. You got 10% down for second home, 3 and 5% down for primary home, and investment property at least 85% down, or excuse me, 85% LTV. Then you go on to Thursday, you go on to Friday, you're learning constantly. And it's very fast paced, so it's not going to be boring. And the same thing for the following week. You got federal law, group tutoring. And like I said, this is all on Zoom live. Some of them self-paced. If you're not ready to take the test, of course, you're going to pause, schedule your exam, and you take the exam when you're ready, and then you move forward. You go to Michigan when you pass the test. You have to have your NMLS license, you know, um, in order to go. Okay, so guidelines. According to the guidelines set by On-Course Learning and NMLS participant in the Mortgage Broker X program, you got to attend all classes. Being late by more than 10 minutes or using your cell phone during a virtual class, trust me, they will catch you. Will result in losing eligibility for the program. I got to tell you, NMLS is very highly regulated, and companies that don't follow the rules will lose their ability to train. So a company, they have to stay on top of you. If you're like, get on your phone, you're not doing it, and that you're just going to lose your eligibility, then you have to get back in line and start all over again. You don't want to do that. For the duration of each virtual class, participants are required to keep their cameras on and must log into using a desktop or laptop computer. So testing, licensing requirement. You're responsible for obtaining and sharing your safe MLO test result with On-Course Learning, which is one of our partners. And more information on this will be provided during orientation during the first 2 weeks. You're not going to be by yourself. They're going to walk your hand. They're going to show you what you need to do, tell you what you need to do to get your tests and get it all squared away. Attendance at Broker X requires all participants to register for and pass the safe MLO test. Failing the safe MLO test results in mandatory 30-day waiting period before you can retest. This is a federal thing. So if you fail the test, you gotta wait 30 days in order to retake it. Not a bad thing. You just, the first 3 weeks, just kind of like review, just do it and then practice test and then get back on the track and just pass it. You fail again, just try again. You're here in this room right now. You all have a real estate exam. You pass your real estate exam, you can pass your NMLS licensing. I want to say pizza cake, but I can't say that. The cost for Broker X training is $250, which is exclusive rate payment, which is due in full to one of our partners, On-Course Learning, within 24 hours of submitting your enrollment form. As part of the Broker X, on-site sales development success track training at UWM is included, no cost to you. So, hotel, flights, free of charge, and majority of time they provide food. They provide lunch, and then you have your end of the day networking. I'm gonna say the hotel they provide buffet style breakfast, that's included. The one thing I'm gonna be upfront that's not included, and I have to tell you, from the hotel, excuse me, from the airport to the hotel, from the hotel to the airport, it's on you. You should simply take an Uber or a Lyft. You're welcome to rent a car, but you're better off taking an Uber so you don't have to worry about directions. And if your flight gets there at midnight and you get lost, just take an Uber. I do that all the time. Anywhere from $60 to $100 one way, depending on the time of day, when you get there, and and things like that. Okay, so going on, participant must also cover their safe MLO test registration fee over about $110. It depends on the state. I know I spent probably $330 for the state of California, and that's just between your background check and this and that, and then your renewal every year is about $330 a year. So I might be wrong, give or take, less or more, but expect about 330. It's probably going to be the magic number. And the cost for the necessary background and credit checks, detailed further orientation. Now, for those of you that are worried about your credit, like what do they look for in a credit? To be honest with you, in California is very consumer driven state, as you know. In my experience, the last 10, 15 years, just various different MLOs, from bankruptcies, foreclosures, to you name it. What they're looking for is fraud. If you have foreclosures for bankruptcy, bad credit, whatever, but none of it is fraud, and you can explain your situation, I'm going to say most likely you're not going to have an issue. However, if bad credit is due to fraud on your behalf, get with me. You might have some challenges, but like I said, if you have a real estate license and it's active approved, I don't foresee an issue. Okay. Frequently asked questions. So how long is the Broker X program, and am I required to attend every class? Of course, the Broker X program is about 5 weeks, with a mandatory 1-hour virtual orientation held the week before. Attendance at every class, like I said, is required. Weeks 1 and 2 features instructor-led virtual coursework. Weeks 3 and 4 are more of a soft-paced exam prep. Week 5 involves on-site training at UWM headquarters in Pontiac, Michigan. By the way, the building is 2.5 million square feet. That's how big it is, and it's amazing. A lot of good energy at UWM. You will learn a lot. Okay, so how would I know the results of my exam, and what should I do with it? Well, you will be responsible to getting your MLO test result and sharing verification with On-Course Learning. Further details again on this process will be provided during orientation and during weeks 1 and 2 of the program. So when would I receive detail about week five? The on-site skill development when you go to Pontiac, Michigan. After attending orientation and completing week one, you're going to receive an email in week two with more information and a link to submit any personal information detail where UWM needs to arrange for your travel. Please note, on-site skill development is part of Broker X and comes at no cost to you. Of course, they're going to book everything for you. But again, if you didn't pass your test, they are going to, postpone that week five for you. How will I know the results? Um, I think oh, okay. So you're going to learn to get it. You're going to get it. They're going to show you where to get your test results after you take the test. You're going to share it with them. Further details, again, will be provided in orientation weeks 1 and 2 of the program. I want to say, last but not least, many of you understand or have heard of AUS or the DU reading that some listing agents or whatever, the buyer's agent want you to provide what you offer. I'm going to tell you one thing. It's meaningless. It does not mean anything. You can manipulate those kind of things. You want to know more about that? My contact information is on the screen. Feel free to take a picture with your camera and jot it down. And again, if you have any more questions about Broker X, want more information on that, feel free again to reach out to me. Thank you for your time, everybody.
All right, awesome, Paul. Thanks a lot. We just bring this up for, a lot of agents during this time of year thinking about, they're making their business plans for the next year. How are they going to boost their business, things like that. And really, getting your NMLS license and being able to broker loans is a great way to supplement your income. And also, it goes hand in hand with this industry. Even if you're only doing a couple loans a year, just having the knowledge um, of guidelines and how it works and the process and everything that goes on with, originating a loan will help you as a real estate agent, both as a listing agent and a sales agent. Because, sometimes we get a buyer come to us and they have a pre-approval already, and maybe you call that lender to start asking questions, and you'll be able to kind of tell if this lender has even done their job with with pre-approving their client, which is going to be your buyer, because you want to minimize obviously issues as you go throughout your transaction. Same thing on the listing side, you'll be able to call up the buyer's lender and really see if this pre-approval is worth anything or not, and how much they've actually dug in and worked with this buyer's financial situation. So um, think about it. If you are looking to supplement your income with the rates dipping down, you know, well, let's say there's a high potential rates are going to be dipping down in 2025. I don't think it's going to be groundbreaking, but we are going to see some reduction. And those that have purchased homes in the past year or two at the higher rate, if there's a 0.5 to 0.75% improvement in rates, they are probably going to be looking to refi. And it's an excellent way for you to just make some extra income with clients that you've already sold homes to. So think about that. It's a great program. UWM is a leader in not only the mortgage industry on the wholesale side, but also in training. I mean, they are a training forward company. Their systems are just dialed in like no other. So, yeah, thanks a lot, Paul. And if you have any questions, reach out to Paul about, maybe this is something you want to do and add to your business in 2025. All right, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we will get into the December forms release. So they do this twice a year. This year we happen to have 3 forms releases because, all the NAR stuff. So again, nothing super groundbreaking, but I am going to go through basically some of the more important things that came up during this forms release. So I'll have some, snippets, I guess, of the forms. that were released in the updates, as well as, I'll click over and show the actual form if it's kind of a long one, because they did make some updates to the RPA and stuff. So first up, the BCO, the buyer counteroffer. So this one, they made some form clarifications. The counter is valid even if previous offers and counters are expired. Added a new paragraph to be able to ratify the contract if the acceptance came after the counter offer expired, which tends to happen pretty often. And then we're stuck writing an amendment and all this other things to make sure that everything was, you know, active as we were going along. So you can see they basically added a number 5 here to the bottom of the counter offer. Says if the date of the seller's signature in paragraph 4 is after the expiration specified in paragraph 2A, seller's acceptance is only binding if buyer agrees to the late acceptance by signing below before 5 p.m. on the third day after the date this buyer counter offer is signed in paragraph 4. So they this was something that basically the RPA and things like that had many revisions ago where we would ratify contracts. The new ones don't really have that feature, but now they added it into the buyer counter offer. This one is a new form, Form CAC. So this is cancellation of agency confirmation and amendment to purchase agreement. So what does this new form do? It has 2 uses. The first section may be used to cancel the agency relationship between the buyer and buyer's broker before the contract has been accepted, such as when the seller will not pay and the broker has a right to step out of the transaction in the representation agreement. So if you are, representing a client, seller is refusing to compensate you, buyer insists on purchasing this home, this is the home they want, and you don't want to be a gratuitous agent, you can step out of the transaction using this form. The second section is used to cancel the agency relationship and amend the purchase contract to reflect proper agency relationship, such as when an agent moves to a new broker and the new and old broker and principals agree to the transfer. So anybody incoming to, this brokerage or, a rare instance of someone leaving and you have agency contract in place, we need to transfer that. So we can view that real quick if you like. Hopefully, I think you can still see my screen, it looks like. So this is what the form looks like. It's a little one-pager, nothing too crazy. Section 1, Section 2. So obviously you're not using both, most likely. You're just using one. I would say probably Section 1 here would be used more often than some of the other sections. So there we go. All right, so oh no, and now I lost my okay. Sorry about that. I guess it's going to be kind of a challenge to flip back and forth, but let me make this bigger again. Okay, so hopefully you can still see my screen. If you can't, throw it in chat, let me know. We did BCO. So form COBR, cancellation of buyer representation. This is starting to come up a little bit more. They did some revisions. This isn't a new form. Added the ability to cancel buyer representation for certain properties only, specifically related to the right to cancel under the BRBC if the broker is exercising the contingency because the seller will not pay compensation. They did some reformatting to bring compensation terms together, and the parties canceling will opt out of either the unilateral cancellation or mutual cancellation. Yes, the forms are already in CAR, Susan. ECCB and ECCS. So this is buyer and seller. These are 2 new forms that got added in. It's the estimated compensation cost for buyer and estimated compensation cost for seller. This is not a mandatory form or anything like that. This is a tool. So It's going to be used if you want. Maybe you're having a hard time explaining a buyer representation agreement, or maybe the buyer is not really fully understanding how the scenario may play out if the seller pays full compensation that is asked for on the BRBC, or if they're only going to pay a portion of it and the buyer is still obligated to pay the difference because of their representation agreement that they have signed with their agent. This is what this form can be used for as a visual. So take a look at it. Maybe you want to test it out. Um, Again, it's a tool to help the buyer understand the effect of various scenarios changing where the payment to the buyer's broker comes from. Buyer pays in full, or seller pays a portion, seller pays in full. I'm gonna attempt to take a look at this one again. Hopefully it doesn't kick me out here. So this is what it looks like. Nothing crazy. Again, we have a little one pager, and they've got basically three scenarios here of what it could look like. So obviously there's going to be a little math involved for you. This is a hypothetical, or um, maybe you're going through negotiations and the buyer's like, well, what is this going to look like now that the seller counteroffered this? What's my obligation to you now? So you can use this form to help explain, um, what their monetary obligation is going to be now. So could be a good form. Not sure. You may or may not use it, but they did give us a little tool here to help kind of explain things with our clients. So it just likes to kick me out each time. So we'll go back in here. So next up, so there's those two, the lease listing agreement. If you are doing any sort of leasing, you just sold your client an investment property. They say, hey, can you help me get this rented? That is a licensed activity. It's not just, hey, I'm doing this because I'm a nice person. That's a licensed activity. There's actually a lot of liability involved in it, and you must have a lease listing agreement in order to market that property. We've gone over this on previous webinars. Um, no, you cannot just throw it on Zillow for them to help them out without a lease listing agreement, because you are marketing the property. That is a licensed activity. So the lease listing agreement, they made some updates to it, added information related to new security deposit requirements, referencing the SDDA, and advertising that the RPO, the rental property owner, takes photographs of the condition. So this is a new law that goes into effect January 1st, where they are going to be required to take pictures of the property condition. I think it's a good law, in the sense that it helps um, keep everything more transparent upon vacating, because now the rental property owner can say, hey, when we turn the property over to you, it looked like this. And that wasn't broken, those holes weren't there, things like that. So it is a requirement now that they need to be taken. And it added a paragraph informing the RPO that the tenant may request the RPO to pay the tenant's broker. That was missing from the previous one. Um, because there was no like SPBB form or anything like that, where, you know, an outside agent requests to be paid for bringing the prospective tenant. So that there was a little bit of confusion or disconnect, I guess, if you want to put it that way, on the leasing side for those agents that are advertising lease listings. So they made a few improvements there. So that's good. Those were definitely needed. Modification of terms for the buyer representation agreement. So we now have two, there used to be just the MT form, the modification of terms. Now we have one for buyer representation and one for the listing side. So make sure you're using the right one. This is used for modifying your buyer representation agreement. Most common use I'm seeing currently is to modify the compensation amount during negotiations, or slightly after. So um, updates to this: modify the agreement to make it usable for tenant representation agreements. which is probably a good add because we still want to get paid if we're bringing a tenant. Added pre-printed options to amend the property type, location of the property to be found, added ability to change the agreement to an exclusive agreement. So maybe you have a buyer rep agreement. It defaults to non-exclusive. Remember that. And maybe things are going well, and you want to turn that into an exclusive. You can do that by instead of signing a whole new buyer representation agreement, you would just use this modification of terms to make that change. And it's good for the PSRA or the BRBC. You can see they added in the tenant representation part. Um, and compensation down here. And you can check the box. This modification to the compensation shall only apply to the following properties. So that was something we were having to write in, or I was advising agents to write in because they're like, well, we have, X commission agreed to here for this particular property we're negotiating on that buyers really love. I'd be willing to, reduce my compensation by X, but only on this property, because if we don't get our offer accepted here, or we do and it cancels and we start looking at properties again, I, as an agent, don't want to be bound to that lesser compensation amount. So I was advising for agents to put in, to write in other terms for this property only type, paragraph there. Now they changed it and you can put in a specific property address, which was a good addition in my opinion. Property type, the property type is changed as follows. I don't see that quite a bit. Usually I see agents just putting in a county that they're going to be, or counties that they're going to be working in with this particular client. Um, and then you can also change it from non-exclusive to exclusive. So good addition there as well. So let me see here. Let me X out of this. Gonna have to reshare again. Sorry about that. Okay. So it looks like we're about halfway done here. The question that popped up. Can you have the county, but say to be determined for the cities? I don't know that you really need to. You might as well just put in the county because that encompasses all of the cities. I personally prefer to keep it broad if the client's willing to do that. Seems like that's pretty common practice. The PSRA. Let's see another question. So, um, I'm a fan of the PSRA, especially if you're starting out with a client and they're a little hesitant about signing a BRBC with you, or maybe you don't have your pitch down, dialed in enough where you're super confident with getting your clients to sign either an exclusive or non-exclusive BRBC. The PSRA is a little less aggressive, so I do see some of you using that. The additions that they made or the revisions they made to this added an ability to attach a list of properties this agreement applies to. Great addition. The current or the previous version only had a spot for 3 properties, so we were constantly, putting in new PSRAs. So they attached, a longer list there, or the ability to put in a longer list. And they also added a continuation period where the broker may have the right to compensation for broker-involved properties. That was missing out of there before. That's a piece that's in the listing agreement. It's also in the BRBC, where, if you had broker involvement, meaning you were by definition working with the buyer, you showed the property, so on and so forth. And maybe they didn't end up moving forward on that property immediately. They kind of went dark on you, and then all of a sudden you notice that, that property goes pending. You find out your buyers, kind of skirted around you maybe because your representation agreement expired. Now there's a continuation period that you can put in there. I would recommend that definitely. Um, I've already seen a couple scenarios come up where agents are, um, you know, getting cut out of commission on the buyer side. So RLA, which is the residential listing agreement, the exclusive version. They made a couple revisions. They added paragraphs to authorize the broker to publish, advertise the seller's willingness to consider offers asking for compensation, concessions. That was previously moved over to the MSLA, which is in the listing bundle, um, which added another form. I'm actually not a super big fan of that one. I think they could have kept it all in the RLA, but so they moved that out of the MSLA and they put it into the RLA. They added a corresponding paragraph to explain what seller concessions are. So with some of these forms, they made updates to help the consumers understand what these things mean, because there's been a lot of news, what are concessions, what are entitled to, what's involved in the concession, all this stuff. So they're giving us some tools to help with explaining this within the contracts. Um, and so here is what that, oh, sorry, let me scroll up here. So this is the new RLA version 1224. They put in a few little legal terms here. E2 is where they added that section for publication of willingness to consider concessions. Um, as this, as we're evolving from August of the NAR release, I do see a lot of agents coming up with their own policy essentially on, do they want to let the buyer's agent know the exact amount the seller is willing to pay or not? Now they kind of put it into the RLA. Um, so it gives the consumer selling the home, I guess, a little bit of power on what they want stated to the buyer's agent. And then section 10 here talks about seller concessions. So they put in some pre-printed stuff there. One other change that they didn't really note is the entity sellers, and they did this on the purchase agreement as well, in case you have an entity seller, and it works pretty much the same way, but they kind of rearranged it a little bit. So if you're looking at my previous walkthrough videos, this section is going to be just ever so slightly different. So it says, the non-individual entity sellers, one or more is a trust, corp, LLC, so on and so forth. You're going to put in the full entity name, and then the contractual identity of the seller, and then legally authorized signer. This is where you put the actual name of the person. So up here is the entity name. Here is the actual name of the signer that is legally authorized to sign. So I noticed that one on the RPA as well. So they changed that up a bit. I noticed they didn't make any mention of it um, in the notes for the releases. So, all right. What else do we have here? Modification of terms we did, PSR, RLA, residential lease or month-to-month rental agreement. Um, so, just the lease agreement if you're doing any type of leasing. They added a paragraph related to compensation being paid in the transaction to the owner's broker and tenant's broker. This was missing out of the previous one, the previous version. Added ability for the owner to agree to pay the obligation to the tenant's broker. Added a reference to the new TRPR form, which I will follow up next. So you can see section 42 here is where you can put in compensation being paid, so on and so forth. So they're working to kind of clear up again that disconnect on the leasing side from representation to actually getting paid, because we didn't have really a great compensation form to say, hey, owner, or hey, leasing office, I'm asking for compensation to be paid and I want you to agree to it. We didn't really have that ability very clear on that previous rollout. So looks like they're cleaning up some of that mess. Um, and then you can see down here in 46, they just added in the TRPR form. What is the TRPR form? Well, a few webinars back, I went over new laws that are coming into effect January 1st, 2025. One of those new laws is offer of tenant positive rental payment reporting. I think this is a good thing for the industry and for the consumer, especially for, college kids and, people just starting out in life who really don't have any credit whatsoever. They can now get positive um, rental payment reporting to their credit. And that would be an obligation of the rental property owner to report that actually. So this is a new form that you can put in there. How does this work? It's used to inform the tenant that they have a right to request that the housing provider report positive rental payments to a consumer reporting agency. This form may be used at the time of the lease or at a subsequent time to either opt in to this reporting or opt out of this reporting. If the tenant requests to stop the reporting, then they may not request to resume positive reporting for 6 months. Housing provider may charge a fee for this service as outlined in the form. So that's a new form that they added in that you'll need to add into your bundle when you're doing leasing. Okay, so RPA are uh, you know they made a lot of changes to this one, small changes, but they made quite a few of them. The biggest one right down here, the SPBB is being removed. Thank goodness. So what did they do? They moved increased deposit paragraphs to a separate addendum. Um, the increased deposit, was a little bit confusing. It was right there on page 1 of the RPA underneath the earnest money section. Um, it's very rarely used. So they added that to a separate addendum, I guess, just to make more room on the form, create less confusion. Modified paragraph 3G to provide more clarity related to seller payments to cover buyer's expenses. Paragraph 3G3 now includes the amount being requested for payment to buyer's broker. Buyers making an affirmative representation that they have a valid agreement that covers the property and the compensation is at or above the amount requested. The buyer will not be required to provide proof of the compensation amount. Again, SPBB is being removed. So for once we're removing a form instead of adding a form. Well, I guess we did add a form in the addendum if you're going to use that, but this one is more commonly used. Reformatted and added clarification for the paragraph related to compensation and modified the escrow instruction paragraph to clarify that escrow will provide uh, first, a disclosure to the buyer of how much the buyer's broker is receiving and a disclosure to the seller of how much the seller's broker is receiving and any credit being paid to the buyer's broker. So let's go ahead and take a look at this real quick. We'll kind of skim through. I like these draft versions because they have things outlined in red so we don't have to, search through this. So you can see page 1 of the RPA, increased deposit. You check a box and they're going to add in a form called the IDA. G2, G3, additional seller credit does not include buyer compensation amounts. So this is if you're asking for essentially closing cost credit. Um, uh, G3, seller payment to buyer's obligation to compensate buyer's broker, buyer compensation affirmation. So you'll check the box there. Seller agrees to pay. So essentially they just snipped out the little section on the SPBB, tossed it in here. So this is where you put the amount that you're asking the seller to pay towards your compensation. So you'll put it right here in G3 now, no SPBB form anymore. Um, let's see, other revisions. A little bit of defensible space stuff for the point of sale requirements. Looks like they just added in a little bit of contract language. The biggest one for us is definitely going to be the SPPB. They added these paragraphs here in the compensation part. Again, they're giving us some tools to help explain this to the consumers. So, if you're flying through the contract, which we all do, and you're like, sign here, sign here, sign here, you can stop here on, 18A and kind of run through that a little bit just for clarifications, make sure a buyer fully understands what's going on. Um, there's some more here in section 19. This is the escrow stuff. And we'll get to the end here. And again, you can see they changed up the entity section. This is for the entity buyer. It's working just like the one I showed you previously on the listing. So they just kind of rearrange that a little bit. So 33B is slightly different, and 34B, which is the entity seller's part, also just slightly different. And that's about it. So that's the new RPA. Nothing, mind blowing or anything like that, aside from the SPBB being removed, which is awesome. Um, looks like I lost my downloads here. Well, we'll have to go to this instead. So RPA and then IDA. So that's the increased deposit addendum. It's a little one pager, nothing crazy. That's only for increased deposits. Let me look at Q&A. Isn't the commission for the listing agent in the listing agreement too? Yes, the commission for the listing agent is in the listing side. The buyer side, the RPA and what I was just referencing there is for how much the buyer's agent is going to be requesting the seller pay towards the buyer's obligation to pay their buyer's agent. Just about done here. So RPOI, rental property owner intake form. Again, we're talking about leasing. So the RPOQ is being renamed to this form to clarify that this form is used by the agent to gather information and to not confuse this disclosure to the as a disclosure to the tenant, like the SPQ or VLQ for sales. They added questions related to disclosure requirements related to wood balconies and stairs, which is new law stuff coming in on January 1st. Added check boxes to the pool safety section. Again, that was new laws that we went over. Another change that came up, SCO, same changes as the BCO. So they modified all the agreements, the BCO, the SCO, and the SMCO, the seller multiple counter offer. They clarified the counter is valid even if previous are expired, and they added in the ratification part. So probably good changes, clearing up a little confusion there. And you can see they added it here on line 6. SMCO, same thing, same additions or revisions. And lastly, changes to the following forms are conforming to RLA changes. So they changed the residential listing agreement. They didn't change it. They revised it. They added in a few little things. They did it with all of them, the commercial, the open, the vacant land, all of them got the same revisions. Same thing for the RPAs. All of those changes that happened on the RPA also uh, the revisions happened on the other versions of RPAs, such as already built subdivision purchase, condominium conversion, commercial, new construction, no default, the RIPA, the RIPA for residential income, and the vacant land one. So on all of those, no SPBB is required as an addendum or attachment anymore. They move that compensation part into the actual form, which is a great revision in my opinion. So um, that's all I got for you today. Again, nothing was super crazy, but we did have some cleanup, it looks like, on a lot of the forms that we've been using that, from that last form revision, and we've been struggling with, trying to kind of piece together a few of the disconnects. So now they've cleaned up a lot of that stuff, it looks like. I'm sure we'll get some more. We get revisions twice a year, so looks like we have one um, question that came in from Manny. So it took 6 months to train agents on the changes. I don't think everyone gets in the biz gets it 100% yet. So it may take another year plus before consumers are aware, or it is common knowledge that this compensation process is how real estate is now done. Yeah, I agree. I mean, for the most part, we're getting to the same outcome we've always come to, but we're just taking a long way around, right? With these extra forms and negotiations and things like that. So can be a little confusing if you are not working with, buyer seller clients steady. And I think that's maybe why they put some of that language updates into the actual agreements themselves and forms themselves to help you and help them understand how this all works now. So, go back and check out the forms, look at those paragraphs, and, use those in your presentations to help your clients understand kind of how this whole process works a little bit. And especially with the buyer rep agreements, if you're having a challenge on getting those signed because they don't want to be obligated to the payment, you know, I'm seeing, uh, you know, as a broker and having all these deals come in and things like that, I'm seeing most of the sellers paying. It's pretty rare still. I don't know what you're seeing out there. Throw it in the chat. I don't know what you're seeing out there, but I'm seeing most of the sellers still paying. They want their home sold. They know that, it's in the benefit to pay a buyer's agent to come in, and they're still paying commissions to the buyer's agent. So I've seen a few deals lost where the buyer agent was unwilling to renegotiate with their client because their compensation that they agreed to with their buyer did not match what the seller was willing to contribute. And they got to a point in, negotiations where there was still a gap that the buyer was going to be obligated to. And I've seen sellers lose a couple offers that way. Um, I've also seen a couple buyers agents struggle with their clients for being so rigid. So think about that as you're going along. I fully um, understand the support if your time is precious and valuable, and your knowledge, and years you've put in and everything. And if your fee is your fee, then that's what it is. Um, but be prepared to handle challenges from um, sellers not paying that full amount and buyers' inability or unwillingness to fill in the gap there. So be sure you have that objection handling skills in place, and what you're going to say for those. So that's all I have for today. Again, we have about 2 weeks off. We'll be back the first Monday of January. So we're just going to go on a little break from the Monday webinars. Again, we are still open. My phone's on. Office is open except for the holidays. So if you need anything, definitely reach out. We are still around. We're just not going to do the Monday meeting so everybody can enjoy time with their families and things like that. I know a lot of you are making your business plans and whatnot for the following year. If you want to schedule an appointment with me one-on-one to go over things, appointment schedule is still open. So go ahead and schedule those up. And if you want a game plan, if you want to talk about lead gen or anything else like that, use my calendar link and my email signature. It's also in the back office. And schedule up a time with me. I'd love to discuss that with you and make it a great 2025, really. So hope everybody has a great holiday season and a safe and happy new year. And give me a call if you need anything. And we'll see you back first week of January. We'll send out notices as usual. So for the San Diego team and anybody else joining in, I'll see you tonight at 6 o'clock, Carl Strauss. And hope everybody has a great day.